And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
Help! I need somebody. Help! Not just anybody. Help!
Good morning and welcome to The Law Show. I'm Sterling Fox, joined in studio by Joe Murphy, QC, and Bill Dick from MurphyBattista, personal injury lawyers here in Vancouver, with lots of information and help for the next hour. And we're going to talk about the anatomy of an ICBC injury claim, among other subjects on the program. Joe and Bill, good to see you again. Welcome back and Happy New Year to you both.
Same to you, Sterling.
Same to you.
I know we're a little past January 1st and it's getting a little warm, but I haven't seen you for a month. So I hope your season was good, and we're off to a brand new season and a new year.
Santa was good to me.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that, Mr. Murphy. Tell us a little bit about the firm. Remind us about what you and your partner Joe Battista put together in the early 80s that continues now into 2016.
Sterling, Joe Battista and I in January of 1982 set the firm up. There was the two of us. We had two secretaries. We rented two offices and two secretarial bays in a law office, and we began. The interest rates were 20%. Businesses were closing everywhere, and the idea of a business opening seemed very strange to everyone, including our bank that was reluctant and skeptical.
I'm sure.
So from that point now, 34 years later, we have 17 lawyers. We have a support staff of 60. We have an office in Vancouver and an office in Kelowna. The Vancouver office, ironically, is in the same location, but we've gone from two offices and two secretarial bays to the entire floor of one of the towers downtown, but we're in the same place.
Interesting, you sublet a corner of an office to begin with, and now you got the whole floor.
We started small, but with a philosophy not to grow. We didn't want to grow.
Right.
We just wanted to do a really good job for our clients, but over time that just spawned more and more work, and we needed more staff to do the cases. So here we are today.
And the Kelowna office, probably in a microcosm kind of way, representative of the growth of MurphyBattista over the past 30 years. Bill, you were first with us about a year or so ago, and you had just moved up to open up the Kelowna MurphyBattista office. You were a one-man band at that time. It hasn't even been a full year, and you've tripled your staff size.
Well, that's true. And although I was a one-man band flying solo in Kelowna, I certainly had the support of MurphyBattista in Vancouver.
Of course.
Which is entirely helpful to have that, and also the reputation of MurphyBattista, which is awesome. We've grown from one lawyer to three lawyers, and it's rolling along really, really well in Kelowna.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the ICBC injury claim, there's one other item that I'd like to just have you two comment on, and that's this whole business of going to court. Both Mr. Murphy and Mr. Dick go to court a lot, if necessary, and every case is prepared as if it's going to end up in court. So when a person is shopping for a lawyer and there's a personal injury at play, Joe Murphy, how important is it to that lawyer shopper that the lawyer that he or she eventually chooses has actual, practical, real courtroom experience?
Sterling, almost no client wants to go to court. In our office, approximately 1 in 10 cases goes to court, solely because the offer to settle is so low that even the client says, I don't want to go to court, but let's do it.
Let's do it, right.
But the insurance industry, knowing that we go to court and knowing that we've had great success in going to court, settles for more money than they would otherwise.
Right.
So if they know we are ready, willing, and able to go to trial, they're going to pay our client more in a settlement than the client would get if the lawyer they had, it was known by the insurance company to never go to court.
Right, and that's that reputation factor, Bill, that you were just talking about, joining the firm, and then feeling pretty comfortable about moving out and opening an office a few hundred miles away because the reputation travels with you.
The reputation of MurphyBattista is a firm that is prepared to go to trial and do very, very well. And I think having that reputation is exactly what Joe says. It makes insurance companies take you more seriously,
Right,
because and you have to be prepared to go.
Right, and insurance companies, while we, the civilians, looking for a lawyer to advocate for us, and we have to do all the homework and figure out what's what, the insurance companies, on the other hand, they know exactly who the lawyers are. They know who goes to court. They know about the reputations of everyone that is a potential opponent in court, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, before in my old role when I was working in Vancouver, I worked for insurance.
I was just going to say, working for the dark side.
I wore the dark hat. I was the cowboy who always wore the black hat. But I can tell you that I would, if I, for example, had an out-of-province insurer who didn't understand the BC legal system or who the players were, right, I would always say, this is a lawyer that you have to take seriously because they're someone who goes to trial and get great results. So that always played a factor in terms of my recommendations for settlement to an insurance company.
Joe, why don't lawyers want to go to trial? Is it a style thing? Is it a personality thing? Or is it just it's a career choice, obviously, but some of them really would avoid going to court at almost all costs.
Some of them, Sterling, don't want to put in the time and effort that you do when you go to trial, because it's like running a marathon physically and mentally every day. And the longest trial I've done is 5 weeks. Some lawyers don't want to deal with the stress of going to trial. Sure. Some lawyers don't want to go to the expense of going to trial because you have to pay all the doctors and all the witnesses and court costs. And some lawyers, and they won't tell this to their clients, they are afraid to go to trial.
Okay.
They're afraid they're going to lose. They're afraid they're going to do poorly. And it's just a lot easier for them to say to the client, this offer on the table is a great offer. But the reality is, because we go to court on 1 in 10 cases, the other 9 of 10 of our clients benefit by getting, in my mind, better settlements.
Sure.
Because of our ready, willing, and able to run the trials.
We Canadians are notoriously polite, Bill. Is it considered rude to ask a lawyer in the course of for a preliminary meeting, do you go to court? And if so, why? And if not, if the answer is no, well, why not? Is that considered rude? Because I'm sure a lot of just people off the street would think, oh, I couldn't ask that. That's kind of personal, you know. Wait a second. If you want this person to be your lawyer, I think it's a fair question. Do you?
I think it's an absolutely fair question. In fact, it's a question that every potential injured person should be asking their lawyer. And it is often the most important thing that is going on in someone's life when they've been injured.
Yes.
It affects them significantly and will affect them for the rest of their lives. It's a very, very important consideration who you choose to be your lawyer. And I think you should come with a number of questions to ask your potential lawyer.
Right.
One of which is, how often do you go to trial? What's your experience? I think that's a critical question.
Is there a place on the internet, Joe, where a person can go and look up the scores of lawyers? Joe Murphy, been to trial 192 times. He's got 150 wins and 2 draws. And do they publish those stats?
The court website, British Columbia court website, contains all the judgments for the last 20 plus years, and you can go in, and if you know how to do it, you can search out and draw the cases where a particular lawyer has acted.
Okay.
And you can then read the decisions.
Right.
I would, if I was the potential client, would say to the lawyer, do you go to court? How often do you go? What's your sort of, how often are you successful?
Right, sure.
But I would also say, and show me these cases over the last 5 years.
And that's what we do on our website. We actually publish our cases,
right,
so that people can go on them and they can read them and say, okay, Joe Murphy, let's see his cases, and they can read them and go, wow, this guy has some great results.
Right.
And I think most lawyers who go to trial will put their reasons that are published on the website so people can read them.
And okay, as long as we're sort of, and we'll finish this off, Joe, because you've started me, you've kind of opened the door. I'm now doing a kind of a checklist. of questions that I should put together if I'm involved in some kind of personal injury scenario, and I know I'm going to need a lawyer. And so then you're going to sit down and have, it's a two-way interview, isn't it? The lawyer is going to determine whether the firm wants to accept your case, and you, at the other side of the desk, are going, do I want this person to represent me? It really is a two-way street, isn't it, Bill?
It is a two-way street, and you know, for the most part, as a lawyer, you're engaged in that conversation. You're trying to find out what it's all about. And on that same interviewing, it's not simply just a matter of has your lawyer gone to trials. What kind of trials have they done?
Right.
Because,
so this is a list of questions, a checklist that I'm asking about.
If I'm a brain injured, or if I have a loved one who's suffered a catastrophic injury, a brain injury or a quadriplegic, I want a lawyer who's got experience handling those type of claims.
Exactly. Who's
gone to trial and has had those kind of successes, who understands who the experts are, who understands how to prosecute those claims. And those are all really good questions to ask.
Right. And Joe, your firm over the years has taken on many file that was originally started by someone else that, for whatever reason, caused the client to go, this isn't working. I need to go to another firm.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I would estimate, Sterling, 1 in 5 of the cases we have in our firm at both offices started out by the client hiring another lawyer, and over time the client realizing they hadn't made the best decision and the file moving, which is a fairly simple process.
Right.
So that happens. And the clients in reality following an accident are dealing at a very vulnerable time for them. They're dealing with a major injury to themselves or their family.
Yes.
The family's in crisis. They're trying to make the best decision about the lawyer to hire. And they sometimes make decisions based upon, well, this is the family lawyer, he did the conveyance, or sometimes they go to websites, and websites can be very impressive. Mm-hmm. But as Bill said, ask to see, show me the results.
Right.
Show me the cases that you've actually done. Because everyone holds themselves out as to be experts, and lawyers say, oh, I do injury, brain injury, and spinal cord injury cases.
Yeah.
But in reality, very few do them, and very few do them really well.
We're going to get into the anatomy of an ICBC injury claim when we come back from the break. But just before we go, Bill, you had mentioned that before you joined Murphy-Battista, like Scott and many of the other lawyers that have joined us on the Law Show from the firm, you had spent some time working for the opposition, for insurance companies. Mr. Murphy, why did you and Joe Battista decide that along the way, people like Bill and Scott and others who are now part of your team, you wanted to hire people with experience working for the other side?
Sterling, I know it is invaluable for a lawyer doing this work, acting for our clients, to know and understand how the insurance company operates, how they think,
right,
what works with them and what doesn't. That's invaluable. Because it allows us to do a better job for our clients in the 90% of the cases that settle, and the other 10% go to trial, and a judge or jury make the decision.
Has the opposition playbook changed a whole lot since you left and joined Murphy-Battista? Do they still play by the same rules, think the same way, that sort of group think from the corporate firms? Is it still very similar?
I think it's still very similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this, of course, and the enjoyment, you can just tell this smiles from Bill. It's the personal satisfaction element, just on a personal guy-lawyer level, that you never enjoyed while you were working for one of those big corporate firms, working for insurance companies. They don't ever say thanks. No, you have a lot of clients who say thanks and send you Christmas cards, for crying out loud.
No, it is far more satisfying as a human being to make a difference in an individual's life and to see that difference play out than working for a big corporate entity where if you get a good result, you feel hollow and they don't care.
And Joe Murphy, as you've said many, many times on this program, as far as you and Joe Battista were concerned right from the get-go, it's all about helping people get their lives back.
Yes.
And it's not always possible to be restored to 100% of what you were, but the idea is to get as close as humanly possible, right?
Yeah, we do whatever we can to try and make their life what it used to be, and to limited or great degree, we hopefully achieve that.
Right. This is The Law Show. Our guests, Joe Murphy, QC, and Bill Deck from MurphyBattista in Vancouver and Kelowna, respectively. We're going to talk about all those ICBC injury claims. We're going to hold your hand and walk you through the process from step one right to the last day after this timeout.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.